Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. If you've ever found this somehow, you know, I put my opinions on here. I usually do this for myself just to get something off my chest, and usually the title is what it says on, explains what the video is. So I'm just going to give my take on Islamophobia. I think it's always the recurring theme of like the internet. So whenever the um, anniversary of 9/11 happens, and given that this year it's going to be the 20th anniversary, that's like a whole special number, 20, it's kind of going to be an extra, people are going to be like extra big about it. So I think, yeah, it's important to honor 9/11 and the whole we shouldn't be victims of terrorism, and we should stop terrorism but also stop the war on terrorism because it's failed and just been a massive flop of justifying systemic and institutional discrimination. And, if we're never going to forget the victims of 9/11, maybe those victims should include those who have bore the brunt of anti-Muslim discrimination. And that in no way downplays how scary or how much 9/11 tore lives apart. But why destroy more when you can build? When the more you discriminate and act bigoted, you just cause more tit for tat damage, and you don't build anything back up from 9/11. Like, I remember this guy was posting about, like, oh, my granddad was subjected to 9/11 and he then got dementia and forgot many things, but never forgot how 9/11 made him forget and hate Muslims, and that is why I hate Muslims. And I'm like, you're not you're not doing anything for your granddad or yourself or any of your loved ones by doing that. Okay? Take the hate out of yourself, and don't be Islamophobic. But since the topic of Islamophobia is hot right now, I'm gonna make this video and I'm gonna give some opinions. Now, this isn't some breakthrough thing that no one has said before. Most of this is based on the FOSIS campaign against the APPG definition of Islamophobia. FOSIS is the Federation of Student Islamic Societies. I'm not sure about the F, but whatever. And APPG is All Party Parliamentary Groups, which is like just a collection of people from different UK political parties. And their issue with FOSIS's issue with APPG's definition of Islamophobia was heavily based around like race and culture and the dominant people with brown skin and turbans looking Muslims and stuff and yada yada yada, which was an issue because Islamophobia is not a type of racism. A lot of people are gonna overuse the two interchangeably. They'll say anti-Muslim racism, which isn't a thing because Muslims aren't a race; we're a religion, which in itself is a protected group. So that's not a gotcha for all the bigots. But it's important to say that because it limits us to a very narrow view of what Islamophobia is, which is when a white person attacks a brown person, which is, could just as easily happen to a non-Muslim for reasons that don't pertain to any kind of anti-Muslim hate. And even if it does, even if an attack on a person who looks Muslim because when they're actually Hindu or Sikh or Christian, happens because that person is motivated by anti-Islam violence. They're attacking someone for how they look. They're attacking someone for where they come from, for the color of their skin, for the origin of their existence. And that is not Islamophobia. That is racism. They're different things. There's some overlap, but it's you have to tell the difference because if we look at things like Hindutva violence, that's Islamophobia, but the APPG definition doesn't cover it. You can't call that a type of racism because, Indians attacking Indians. It's how do you base it? How can you call that racism? It's faith discrimination. Well, Islam, we are, as Muslims, are a faith group. Um, and when you distort them, when you make a definition of Islamophobia that is not based around the faith of Islam, it also how you define Islamophobia also depends on how you define a Muslim, and that has to be defined by the faith itself. So, what is a Muslim? A Muslim is a person who prays 5 times a day, who pays the zakat, fasts Ramadan, says the Shahada, does Hajj at least once in a lifetime. And that can be anyone. It can be a white person, it can be a Chinese person, it can be an Arab, a Latino, a black person, or anyone. The UK Muslim discourse is so Desi centric. I'm gonna be real here, and it tends to narrow down to what looking Muslim looks like, and what the whole just narrows down the Muslim discourse. And when we have a very racialized idea of what's Muslim, you can have people calling themselves Muslim who don't actually practice the faith, but they're like, oh, I have a Muslim name, or I have Muslim heritage, and it really gets on my nerves. It's like the whole anti-sectarianism thing in Lebanon, where you have, I can't say this for Christians, but there are definitely Muslims out there who water down their religion so much just because they don't want to appear sectarian or something. It's like, you think in a diverse country we tolerate difference, but instead we water ourselves down and try to be homogenous, and that's sort of the internalized Islamophobia. And we do that for society's expectations of national unity. And the really insidious part about it is that it excludes black people. Like, black Muslims don't get enough coverage. They're very widely unrepresented. No one thinks of, if you see a black person, you don't automatically think of Muslim, even though Nigeria nominally has one of the highest Muslim populations in the world. And some of our greatest Muslim figures in the past and in the present are Muslim, and are black Muslims. I don't know, my train of thought kind of got derailed there, which is why I kind of said some dumb stuff there. And, Islamophobia has existed for as long as Islam. It didn't, come to fruition when 9/11 happened. It's, every prophet, we in the Quran, it describes every prophet as Muslim. So they faced Islamophobia, Prophet Muhammad was, and the Sahaba were targeted by the enemies of Islam. And colonialism, if you look at the way Muslims are written about in such a demoralizing and derogatory way, that's Islamophobia. It sort of paints Islam as a non-white thing, and it juxtaposes it against whiteness, which in itself was supposed to stop people from in Europe adopting Islam as an ideal, because they saw it as a threat to their, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant way, or whatever other Western European colonizing force. And so it's important to have this stuff in mind when you're talking about Islamophobia. 9/11 did not create Islamophobia. It maybe brought it back to the mainstream, or it what we can say for sure is that 9/11 is simply just another stage of Islamophobia. And if 9/11 if 9/11 didn't happen, Islamophobia would take a different form, and it's there for as long as there are people who have views who have anti-Islam views, anti-Islam prejudices, and it's always going to be there until you undo those prejudices. And that's how, 9/11 is not the focus of Islamophobia. And that's what you need to have in mind, and I think that needs to be more brought to the mainstream as an opinion. I'm going to try and link some good resources on Islamophobia, more detailed talks. I'm just giving my opinion, putting something out there I think is worth listening to. I think a lot of a lot of what I've said is just a shortened down version of stuff I've heard from other campaigns, and so I do hope you check it out. If you like my channel and want to, just listen to more of some random guy saying his opinion and putting it on YouTube, subscribe, share, and like.